welcome to the next episode of the team selection series, where we'll be focusing this time on strengths and weaknesses. So you might be wondering, what is a leadership style? And better understanding how to understand what is my own leadership style. Because at the end of the day, there is no two leaders that are the same. Every leader is a unique leader. And it's really important to understand what is your leadership style, because once you understand what your leadership style is, it will better help you to guide your team through the journey of the next year when you're LCP. But most importantly, it'll help you to understand what is the kind of roles that you don't have in your leadership style that might need to be complemented by your team. So there's multiple ways to understand what your leadership style is. Whether you do the 16 personality test, whether you do the Belbin to understand what are the different team roles that you have, one as yourself, but also within the team, whether you do the Enneagram test, or whether you do DISC. Like all of these different tests, there's a lot of resources out there that will all give you different understandings of putting together your leadership style and your strengths and your weaknesses as an individual. So there's a lot to understand. It also helps you understand like what your strengths and your weaknesses are. So let's dive a little deeper. I'm going to show you a quick video on like why it's important to focus on your strengths more than focusing on your weaknesses.
According to Einstein, you are a genius. And him, and her, and, well, all of them. Einstein said everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll go through its whole life believing that it is stupid. We're all born great at something, but as we grow up, we find out all the things we're not so good at. So we spend our life feeling bad about those things, working on our weaknesses, while we take our strengths for granted. But wait, how about him, and her, and them? They focused on the one thing they were great at. They went from ordinary to extraordinary. And you can too. Your winning formula is someone else's losing formula. You have a natural way to learn, to lead, to live, to love. A natural strategy that suits you in relationships, in your work, in social media, even in the design of your day. In fact, if you do anything that feels like hard work, you're already doing the wrong thing. When you know your genius, you can get in your flow. And when you know the genius of your friends, your workmates, your boss, children, family, you can appreciate them for what they are best at, and that brings out the best in them. As for the things you're not so great at, well, there's a genius in your network waiting to do those things for you, with half the time and double the happiness. It will help you to live the life you love, and love the life you live.
So my question to you is, now that you think of it, like, how can we bring out the genius in all of us? Because every single one of us is a genius, and we just need to understand who we are as a genius and what that genius means, but then how do we best utilize it? So we're now going to talk about a bit of an exercise, and we're going to do an exercise to help you identify the strengths and the weaknesses that you might have, because at the end of the day in ISEC we want to focus on our strengths over our weaknesses. And the purpose of life is to give you a chance to be the grandest version of the greatest vision you have ever held about who you are. That's what Neil Donald Walsh said. So for being at your greatest, it's about doing two things: owning your strengths and breaking your limits. But for today, we're going to focus specifically on owning our strengths. So I want to ask you, when was the last time you were the best version of yourself? You can pause the video and really think about this. I would encourage you to put some music on in the background and take this opportunity to reflect. When was the last time you were the best version of yourself? When you're ready, there's a few more questions. What was going through your mind at the time you were the best version of yourself? What were you thinking? And most importantly, what were you doing? Because those moments were truly awesome because you were using your strengths. Like, it's very important to be the one that's using your strengths and not focusing on your weaknesses, which we tend to all do in life. So like, how do we change that? So now let's explore a little further. And there's this book called Strengths Finder by Tom Rath, and it focuses on how you can help identify the strengths you have by putting them into 4 different categories. So these are the 34 Strengths Finder themes, and what we want you to do is pause the video and choose your top 5 strengths you most identify with and live regularly. So once again, here are the 34 Strength Finder themes. So I'll give you a minute for you to pause the video, choose your top 5, and when you're ready, continue this video. So the second part is, based on the top 5 strengths, which one of the broader 4 themes of leadership do your strengths fall under? And now you might be wondering what are the leadership themes I'm talking about. So the first one is about executing. You have the ability to take an idea and transform it into reality within the organization that you lead. The second is influencing. You help the team to reach a much broader audience. The third is relationship building. It's essential to holding the team together. And last but not least, strategic thinking. Those who are able to keep people focused on what they could be are constantly pulling a team into the future. So remember those top 5 strengths that you identified from the list? Now let's see how they categorize. So where do your top 5 strengths fall in place? And which is the one theme that is more apparent than any other? Now it's important to do a bit of reflection. Again, put some music on in the background, have a journal, have a notebook, and really sit down and think about this. What was your first reaction to the results that you got? And how well do you think these strengths reflect the ways that you act most naturally and also feel as an individual? And have you always been able to use your different strengths well in your team experiences? Because being an LCP means you're going through another team experience. So here's a great quote by Tom Rath from the book. It's what great leaders have in common is that they each truly know his or her strengths and can call on the right strength at the right time. We all have different strengths, but it's important to know when do we use them and how do we use them is very, very important. And alternatively, if you want another thing to identify strengths through going through a quick assessment, then check out the test at the richardstepp.com website, because it will ask you a series of questions and it'll identify, based on your answers, what does it believe your key strengths are and how can you better support those, but also identify your top 1 weakness and what are the steps to go to make it better. Now, you might have heard of this guy called Gary Vaynerchuk, and at the end of the day, he is very, very self-aware as an individual, and he always focuses on his strengths. Because at the end of the day, if you prefer doing one thing, then don't believe that you have to do anything else just because other people say that that's what you should be doing. It's important that you focus on your strengths more than trying to fake a personality in an individual that you aren't. So what's coming up next will be, how do we analyze the personality test to understand the profiles within a team? Thank you, and I'll see you shortly.